Jones, and I come to you from subtropical London. Not at all grey as it is in the picture behind me. I am here to present on P2, ACCA P2 Corporate Reporting, and I have a slide behind me to prove the case. There I go into the corner as usual, and there is my email as usual, just reinforcing that over and over again. Please feel free to email me if you have any problems at all. I haven't had much email correspondence from you guys actually. Feel free to email me on any subjects you like. And let's just scatter through the stuff we've done so far. There's my pen. Let's just zip through that. Oh, go on, wake up, fella. There we go. So on the first session, we did basic groups, then we moved on to advanced groups, well, complex groups. Advanced groups, that's a good way of saying it, isn't it? Because we did changes in ownership first, the really advanced subject within basic groups. Changes in ownership, acquisitions, disposal, and transfer of ownership between owners. Some pretty hairy stuff in there. And then we did complex groups, which despite its name is not actually as complex as some of the basic techniques. Parent by sub, sub by sub, sub. It's got some tricky stuff in it, but not really that hard. And the beautiful homework question, Ronette, of course. And then last time we were together, we did foreign currency, of course, but we got slightly ahead of ourselves because we did cash flow statements introduction. What we did was we learned how to construct a cash flow working. You might remember me saying cash flow statements is made up of only two technical components. That is the measurement of the cash flows and the slapping of those cash flows onto the statements. That is technically true, but because I've said only two, there's a temptation to think, therefore this is easy. And somehow it just isn't. Even this introductory question that I'm going to do with you now is not easy. And more recent exam questions are proper hard, to be honest with you. But it is true. There are only two things that you need to do when doing a cash flow statement, which is measure the cash flow and slap it onto the cash flow statement itself. So we're going to do cash flow statements and then we're going to move on to current issues. I'm not exactly sure how the session will split, but kind of 2/3 on the CFS and 1/3 on current issues, roughly like that. So an hour and 10 minutes on cash flow statements and then 50 minutes on current issues, something like that, roughly speaking. So that's the plan for this afternoon. So if that's the plan for this afternoon, I should be backed up by my class notes, and of course, there they are. And I'm just going to say a few hellos. Hello, Greg. Hello, Humayun. Hello, Ridwan. And hello, Punit. And I'm going to do my usual test and just make sure everything's coming through nice and clear. What circular letter have I highlighted there in green? I don't know what's going on with that. What circular letter have I highlighted in green just there? Wow, that was quick. Goodness me. Goodness me, goodness me. The internet is obviously lightning quick today. I would expect lightning quick answers from all of you guys, therefore. So, where are we? We're in chapter 4 now, aren't we? So, prepare to go light speed through the notes, which makes me slightly drunk when I'm looking down at this. There we go. So, there's the chapter on cash flow statements. The first section of the chapter on cash flow statements teaches us about the process of producing a cash flow working. There is an example. It's in fact not the one that I did with you at the end of last session. I made up 3 examples off the top of my head, but there's a homework 1 if you want to have a practice, and there's another 2 down there. But what we are doing is not Squire, because Squire has already been recorded online and is sitting in session 3 discussion task. Session 3 discussion task has Squire. What we're going to do is Ducky. And I'm going to set you up with a working that, a process that has changed very, very slightly over the years. And I now like to do like this. What you do is you get yourself 2 fresh, new, brand new pages. Now that is impossible to see unless I really make this small. Can you see that? There we go. 2 brand new pages. And I'm going to make these ridiculously small. In fact, I actually have to produce a little... give me a second. There we go. And then baja! There we go, that works better. 2 fresh new brand new pages like that. Now, what I want you to do is to take your pen and to slash a line down the middle of the first page. Hoo-yah! That's not very straight, is it? Should we try that again? Hoo-yah! That's not particularly straight either, but not too bad. And hoo-yah! Well, that's flipping awful. Come on, I can do better than that. What am I doing wrong? I'm not looking where I'm going. That's what. Oh, there you go. That's what I was doing. I'm not looking at the bottom. Trick is to look at the bottom as you aim for it. That's what you got to do. And then what you do with the second page is you strike a couple of crossbars in there. Now, what we're going to do with this second page is put workings into each box. Obviously, I've done this question before, but I can't remember how many workings there are. I think there's 4 or 5. And the last time the examiner examined cash flow statements, he actually occupied all 6 spaces and had 6 workings, but 6 seems to be the maximum number of workings you're required to do. And then, of course, the CFS itself will appear on page 1 like that. A cash flow statement is an enormous thing, absolutely ginormous. So to get the CFS all onto one page and manage the information as best as we can, we've put the 3 sections like this. We have the operating section on the left, and then we have the investing and financing sections, 2 sections on the right like that. In case you're wondering why I keep looking to the left over there, the reason I'm looking to the left is there's a little mini-me over there, and I can see how it looks to you, which is great. So there you go. So that's what we're going to do. What else do I need to say? Absolutely naff all. Let's just get on with this. So how's my rubber looking? Let's try that. Oh yeah, nice. Good. Smashing, smashing, smashing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in to this area here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in there. I'm going to zoom in there. Are you ready? Off we go. And there it is. And write the title, of course. All good. It's question. Ducky. CFS. Excuse me. And a CFS starts with a very strange thing. It starts with profit before tax. What we do is we zoom off to the examiner's P&L report and copy some information from that P&L report. So back to the question, you can see that the examiner's questions, they always start with the balance sheet. Just his thing, I guess. And the P&L is on the second page. And there it is. There is the P&L. Now we're going to do something very odd. We're going to work out that the profit from operations is 790. I'll just say that again. We're going to work out that the profit we already have of 790 is 790. Whoa, that's weird. And we're going to do that by copying the PBT and then reversing upwards. Because we reverse upwards, this process is called the profit reversal. Because we reverse the sign as we reverse upwards, this process is called the profit reversal. So we're going to start with the 866. 866, and then work our way upwards, reversing the sign as we go. So interest expense, 45. That was negative 45, so we make this positive 45. We reverse the sign as we reverse upwards. Interest income 23. Because that was positive, we make it negative. And then associates 98. Because that was positive, we make that negative. And then we add down to confirm that the operating profit is 790. We work out the 790. Isn't that bizarre? Now, the reason we do this is because there are 1, 2, 3 marks for that. Wow, possibly the 3 easiest marks in the entire exam. Wonderful, just copying and reversing the sign. But it is a bit strange what we're doing here. So I do recommend that you do actually genuinely add down and make sure you've done this right, because it's quite easy to correct if you've done it wrong. 866 plus 45 minus 23 minus 98 equals 790. So I know that seems a bit odd working out the figure that you know that you've got, but actually, because what you're doing is very strange, because it's very strange, it's strangely easy to make mistakes. So, and then the format then locks down. The operating, can I just start again? The profit reversal does change slightly from question to question, but everything else from now on is locked down and is exactly the same from every question to the next question. So, for example, the next section is actually called the operating profit reconciliation, and that's got 3 blocks of 3, and those 3 blocks of 3 never change. The inventory receivable and payable movement is calculated by bringing 3 simple numbers together. It's the opening minus closing plus acquisition. And because it's got 3 simple numbers being brought together, the culture is to have those 3 simple numbers on the face right here. Then the next 3 are the non-current asset thingies. So that's the classic one, depreciation. Depreciation, disposal and impairment. Depreciation, disposal and impairment, and then the other 3 lines are just 3 blanks. 1, 2, 3. And then we have this mouthful, CGFO, cash generated from operations. Just about seeing that above the top of my head. Can't quite write it in full myself, but almost there. Cash generated from ops, that's pretty close, isn't it? And then we have interest paid and tax paid. And both of those paid balances are paid, and therefore the cash flows out. Now that gives us the OCF, the operating cash flow. The interest paid tends to be the hardest figure in the entire question. But the interest paid is pretty simple. It can be worked out on the face. It's basically the same as inventory. So it's opening minus closing plus P&L charge. It's not quite the same. Can you see that? So it's a bit of a squeeze there, isn't it? I don't know quite why that's squeezed. It's probably because my angle of my line was a bit off there. Opening minus closing plus P&L charge. P&L charge, okay. And then we repeat the operating cash flow. It's maybe I'll just change the scale so you can see it repeating. So this balance here goes up again there and repeats. So we've got operating cash flow. Where are we now? Operating cash flow. I'm afraid that requires fine motor skills beyond mine. So I think I better go to the usual scale. And then we have investing and financing. The examiner's very lopsided with this. I don't know why, don't ask me, it seems mad to me. But he has loads of investing and very few financing. That just seems to be his way. So roughly of the order of 12 investing lines, and then financing, you know, roughly in line with your CGFO, basically, like this. Now for financing, the number of lines that you need is actually quite few. 6 is plenty. So, I mean, I'm not really thinking about this very much. Somewhere about here, that's where your cash flow goes, but I am struggling a little bit with the motor skills here, so I'm going to just make it big again. And then the cash flow is reconciled to the opening cash and the closing cash. Opening and closing. And we just carry on. And carrying on just means picking up your pen and ticking through the information in the question. So let's just start ticking. What you do is you go back to the balance sheet and start at the top. And just tick, tick, tick until everything's ticked. It's a bit brain dead, actually. I'm feeling a bit sort of groggy this afternoon, if I'm honest with you. So I'm quite glad to be doing cash flow statements, because they're ideally suited to a groggy brain, because all you do is just copy this stuff with your brain turned off. So here we go. What we got first? Goodwill. So goodwill, I used to have 92 and now I have 78. I used to have 92 and now I have 78. Where do I go here? Well, I'll just show you where I go so you can really see. What I do is I go down here and set up a goodwill working. Why goodwill? Just by pure coincidence, it just happens to be the first working. That's the only reason. Oops, I think I need to bring that in a little bit. Just give me a second. Didn't allow for the margin there. So opening and closing. Opening or closing. I used to have 92 and now I have 74, I think it was. Now I have 78. Always, always, always opening positive, closing negative. Then we go to the next one. The next one is tangibles. You'll write the title first, actually. So tangibles, opening and closing. These are big numbers, aren't they? I used to have 1, 2, 4, 8. 1, 2, 4, 8. And I now have 2, 4, 7, 3. Now I have 2, 4, 7, 3, opening positive, closing negative, and so we carry on. On to the next one, investment in associate. Let's have the title first. Used to have 550, now 545. Opening positive, closing negative. Then I just carry on ticking through. Inventories. So we just go onto the face of the CFS now. I used to have 622, I now have 734. So 6, 2, 2, now 7, 3, 4. Lovely, and I carry on. Receivables, I used to have 601, now 689. So 601 and 689. Cash and cash equivalents is the opening and closing balance of cash, basically, for the cash flow statement. So that goes down there at the bottom of the cash flow statement itself. So page 1 at the bottom down there. I used to have 205, I now have 57. Used to have 205, now 57. So we used to have 205, and now I have 57. And for that to have happened, 148 must have flowed out. That's calculated as a balancing figure. And that balancing figure is worth 1 mark. And then we carry on into the bottom of the balance sheet, where you can see that the share capital goes up from right to left, from last year to this year, and that means there must have been a share issue. And a share issue after incorporation is always at a premium. This one included. And basically we just want the share issue by the simplest method possible. There's 1 mark for this. Doesn't really matter how you go about getting the 1 mark, it's entirely up to you. I like doing 100 minus 60. I don't really have any strong opinions on this, but 100 minus 60 plus, what was the amount of premium that flowed? 185 minus 75. Which is, what's that? So it's 40 plus 110. 150 is the share issue. That must have been the cash that we got for the shares that were issued. Good. All right. Carrying on, I should tick those, shouldn't I? So it's clear that I've done them. You never do the reserves. Neither of them. Not just in this question, but in every question. Continuing on to the NCI. We need another working for this. Let's have it here. Used to have 107, now 157. Opening positive, closing negative. And so we carry on. Deferred tax. Deferred tax is clearly a tax balance, as you can see. So we're going to need the tax working. For me, personally, I found it useful to sort of lay out the basics of the tax working as a kind of pro forma. Your answer will be based on that. There might be more going on than just those 6 balances, but there'll be at least those 6 balances. Well, actually, in this question, there's no OCI, so that's not applicable. But in your exam, there'll be all 6 balances waiting for you. And of those 6 balances, we have 2 of them already. Where are they? 417,390. So 417,390. Used to have 417, now 390. Opening positive, closing negative. And then we carry on. The redeemable preference shares have gone down. I think we can make a reasonably educated guess that a block of the lending has been repaid. So that's a financing flow. So pref, repaid, or paid, or whatever what word you want to use, doesn't matter. And you know, let's not be clever about this. Let's just get the 30. The liability went down by 30, so presumably what we repaid was 30. And the loans have gone up, so presumably there's been a loan issue. Again, let's not be too clever about this. Let's just see what the difference is. So 10, 05 and 570. Gives you 435, and the loan capital is going up, so cash must be flowing in, presumably. Looks a bit scattered, that 435. We'll just tidy that up a little. Nice. Okay, and then the current liabilities. Now the current liabilities in this particular question are not given on the face of the balance sheet, which is a shame, because it means we have to wait for that information, but it can't be helped. What happens, happens. Then we go back to the P&L. What you do is you pretend you've never seen the P&L before, and you start again at the operating profit. It's a little bit of a weird thing to do, but that's the way it works. So income from associates, 98. I need to tick that, don't I? Actually, do you know what I'll do? I'll just tick through all of them to show the idea. No, I won't. I'll tick through them one at a time. Income from... Yeah, no, I'll tick through all of them, then remove the ticks. So you're just going to tick through this, 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 tick all the way through, right? But, you know, I do sometimes forget stuff, so to make sure I actually do things right, I'll tick properly now. So associates, 98. Where are we now? There we go. So P&L, 98. When an associate makes some profit, the associate grows. So that's making the associate go up. Then the interest income, presumably that's also interest received. There's no particular place where this goes, but maybe investing. $23 as the cash comes in. And then there is a very particular place for the interest expense, the P&L charge. We highlighted that in pink earlier. I'll highlight it again in pink. Here, pa-cha, right there, that's where that fella goes. I've forgotten the number now. Was it 45? It was indeed 45. So 45, where is it? What am I doing here? There we go. 45, it's a bit of a squeeze, isn't it? And so on. Tax 213. Where's my tax working? Down there. Tax 213. And the current charge for tax makes the tax liability go up. And the NCI, when the NCI makes NCI, the NCI grows. 69. And then, depending on your examiner's mood, your examiner usually presents you with this thing, a very odd statement, very helpful statement, a movement statement called the SOCI, the Statement of Changes in Equity, the SOCI. It's a really nice little thing. And as you can see, it's got, you know, opening, closing, and the stuff that happens in between. And that's the basis of this thing called the SOCI. But you don't really need to know any detail there, and you don't need to know any of the stuff highlighted here in the middle in yellow. That's all irrelevant. For our purposes, the only thing we're interested in is the orange on the right-hand side. In fact, really, the only thing that we're interested in, really, to be honest with you, is the dividends paid. That's what we want to have. That's 78 there. That dividend paid, you copy it, you get a mark. Goes into financing. Dividends paid, 78. And then, if you can be bothered, you pick up the other stuff from the SOCI as well. And the other stuff that we have here, we've had the 78. Can you see the revaluation gain of 80? That affected the tangibles, of course, make them go up. And exchange difference on foreign associate, that made the associate shrink. So the FX from the SOCI. When an associate makes a loss, it shrinks. And what else do we have? Oh, look, there's the issue with the capital. So we actually had the share issue of 150 already. Indeed, you can see that figure of 40 and 110 that we were talking about earlier. So as it happens, you can work out the 150, or you can just wait till you get it from the SOCI and copy. It's up to you. And then we have the notes. And you answer the notes in any order. Punit, if I don't remember to answer your question at the end, would you remind me of your question? It's not a great time to answer it now, but it is a good question. And I do want to talk about it, but not just now. And then we need to bash out the notes. And what we're looking for is basically information that we can copy. And this stuff here looks pretty good, but the trouble with, oh goodness, that's not what I meant to do. How do I go back there? I've got to go do the drunk thing again, haven't I? I saw that there. There you go, there it is. Sorry guys, pressed the wrong button there. I meant to press the remove button, but I pressed the home button. Let's say that again then. So, I mean, this is not too bad. This is a shopping list of information, but this scary stuff down here is putting me off a little bit. You're looking for paragraphs that basically look easy and you fancy having a go at, and you just do them. Obviously, I've done this question before, so I kind of know what I'm cheating a bit and do know what I'm doing. But if you look at paragraph 4, you can see there's very little going on. Shopping list of information. It's got to be the one to go for. So let's go for that. So trade payables, 913, 1003, onto the face. Yeah. I didn't say my usual formula there. I used to have 913, now I have 1003. Ooh, look at that. It's a devil if you make a mistake like this to spot it later. Whew. So hard. I'll just check again. I think I used to have 913. I used to have 913. Ooh. And now I have 1003. Sorry guys if you copied me there nice and quickly. Easy for me to remove my my electronic writing with an electronic rubber, not so easy if you're using pen. Then we carry on. Interest accrual, 9 and 6. That has a particular place as well. That goes at the bottom there, 9 and 6. Let's do my used to and have now. I used to have 9. I used to have 9. I now have 6, and we get 48. And that's 2 marks for the 48. Adding across there. Great. And then taxation, 202 and 222. I used to have 202 and now 222. The increase in the loans during the year was related to the issue of loan stock, partly for cash and partly to finance the purchase of raw materials valued at 70. That sounds horrible, doesn't it? So, we'll kick that into touch and try and find something simple to do. Paragraph, I should be ticking what the paragraphs I've done. So I've done paragraph 4. Paragraph 6, the exchange differences including the statement of changes in equity relate to the foreign associate. There was a dividend from the associate during the year. Okay, so it's kind of encouraging me to close out the associate working. So I will. This is a cash flow. It's the associate's dividend received, we've just been told. I've got a calculator here, my trusty Casio. 550 minus 545 plus 98 minus 13 equals 90. I'm sure I could have done that quicker in my head. 90. The associate dividend from the associate is 90, very good. Humian. So that's paragraph 6 in the bag. The preference share dividends already paid in full each year and included in the interest. Part of the preference capital was redeemed during the year, so that's the part repayment of the preference capital. That's already dealt with. Paragraph 5 looks a bit of a problem. Surely we can find something easier than that. Oh yeah, paragraph 3, that looks nice. Tangible non-current asset movement for the period include the following amounts in net book value. Oh, we love this. Depreciation, literally, you copy that, you get a mark. 51. So depreciation is 51. And you add it back to remove its effect. So what we are targeting here is the, is that going to be, it's going to be behind my head. I think I better change the scale. What we're targeting here is that, no, it's good. What we're targeting here is the cash generated from operations. What we're targeting here is the cash generated from operations. But what we're starting with is the operating profit. So anything that's in the operating profit that isn't a cash flow, we're trying to remove its effect. Do you see that? So there's the stuff in, most of the stuff in the operating profit is a cash flow, but some of the stuff in the operating profit is not a cash flow. Anything that applies like that, we're going to add it back to remove its effect. So depreciation is a cost, but it isn't a cash flow, so we add it back to remove its effect. It takes quite a lot of saying that, doesn't it? But actually copying it is dead easy. The tangible non-current asset movement for the period include the following amounts in net book value. And of course, quite separately, we need to remember to apply this to the tangibles. And depreciation, of course, makes the tangibles go down. And speaking of down, disposals do the same thing. The tangible non-current asset movement period during the year had the following amounts of net book value. Disposals 40. That there is the machines walking out. When the machines walk out, machines walk out. And the tangibles go down. But hopefully when the machines walk out, cash walks in. The disposal resulted in a profit on disposal of 7 million included in cost of sales. So 7 million is a profit. Sorry, I lost my concentration for a second there. That's, oh, wow. Highlighting in white, I've never done that before. I'll try that again. I was aiming at yellow. That 7 and that 40 are of course related. If the asset is sold at more than 40, then that would result in a profit. The profit is 7, so the asset must have been sold for 7 more than 40. In other words, 47. So the PPE sales is 47. And then comes a really tricky thing. It's still worth a mark, but really tricky thing at the end of this sentence. And that is included in costs. Included in costs. This 7 million is included in cost of sales. It's included in costs. What that means is the 7 is currently in 2 places at once. Clearly the 7 is in the 47, you can see it there, but it's also in the 790 as well. It's also in the operating profit. Now the 7 is a cash flow, but there's only one cash flow, and it is included in costs as well. It's included both in operating profit and in PPE sales, which is duplication. So this line here for disposal, what it does is it pulls out the profit on disposal to prevent the double counting, to prevent the duplication. So watch out for that. That balance there says disposal. It's exactly what it is. And there's, of course, a temptation when you're looking back at this to go, hang on, I thought it was a profit on disposal. Why is there a sausage around it? This line is not recognizing the profit on disposal. It's doing the exact opposite. It's pulling it out to prevent the duplication. And, oh, that's that paragraph done. So we're still looking for easy stuff. Up to the top, paragraph 1, it's a shopping list. It's going to be all right. Ducky acquired 90% holding of Prince during the year. The fair value of the assets of Prince at that date were as follows. And basically it's the same logic for each of these. When a sub walks in with non-current assets walk in. When a sub walks in with inventories walks in. When a sub walks in with receivables walk in. When a sub walks in with cash walks in. When a sub walks in with trade payables walk in. And when a sub walks in with a tax liability walks in. So all of this is exactly the same logic. But its positioning around the cash flow statement all depends on which balance it is. Starting with NCA. So NCA first. Sub acquisition 172. What the heck, we're at the end of the question now. Let's... No, it's not. When a sub walks in with inventories walks in, as does receivables, as does payables. So that's 33, 27, 22. Now I'm just going to show you a little bit of trust reverse. It's very cute. TTR, so that's trust reverse. We're going to use a formula to get the right sign for the next balances. I'll show you what I'm meaning by that by whacking it on my calculator. So 622 minus 734 plus 33 gives us minus 79. Not only do we trust the 79, but also the sign as well. 601 minus 689 plus 27 equals minus 61. Not only do we trust the 61, but also the sign as well. And the last one, 913 minus 1003 plus 22 gives us minus 68, and we reverse the sign to make it plus 68. So we trust reverse in the working capital. Trust reverse in the working capital. That's the way to score the mark. Now, unfortunately, recently these balances were downgraded to 1 mark each. So that's just 1, 2, 3. And you get 0 if you get the sign wrong. But that's why you're using trust reverse, to make sure you get the sign right. Okay? Then continuing on, when a sub walks in with cash, cash walks in. So that's sub, oh, don't want to read, sub acquisition. Often called cash in hand. And that's worth a mark. And finally, when a sub walks in with a tax liability walks in. Was that 13? Yes. Good. And then back to the question. The purchase consideration was 204 and comprised of 20 million ordinary shares of $1 in Ducky, valued at 4 each, and the remainder in cash. Now, of course, what we're interested in is the cash consideration. So what we need to strip out of the 204 is the share consideration. The share consideration is 20 multiplied by 4, which is 80. So onto the cash flow statement. Let's find out how much cash we spent on sub-acquisition. Oops. It was 204 minus the 80 minus the 4 times 20 minus the 80 gives 124. And of course, when we bought the shares, when we bought the sub shares, the cash flowed out. So put a sausage around it. That's another mark. But notice how the easy marks are worth a mark, like the 3, and the harder marks are also worth a mark. So you don't get more marks for the harder numbers. It really is all about the easy numbers. A cash flow statement is really all about the easy numbers. Doing those quickly is the key to a cash flow statement. An impairment loss has been recognised on the goodwill arising on another previously acquired wholly owned subsidiary acquisition as included in cost of sales. It's the group's policy to value the NCI at fair value, which at acquisition was 22. Nice. So 22, when a sub walks in with NCI, NCI walks in. And that gives us the cash flow for the NCI dividend paid. $107 minus 157 plus 69 plus 22 equals 41. And the NCI dividend paid goes into financing, so the two are next to each other. I've forgotten the number already. Oh, here it is. 41. Hang on a second. Wasn't there something about goodwill? Oh, yeah. There's, of course, when a sub walks in with customers, customers walk in. Now, the goodwill working that we do is mathematically identical to the goodwill we've done at any time, but the presentation on a cash flow statement is different, basically, because you're just getting one mark. It's still, consideration plus NCI minus net assets. It's still exactly the same, three things being added together, but the three things that are added together on a line rather than the formal schedule that you are used to for question 1 when it's a when it's a P&L or a balance sheet. So the total consideration was 204. The total NCI was that figure there at 22. And the net assets I've forgotten. So let's go and have a look. So where's the net assets? There they are. Can you see them at the bottom of the list of assets and liabilities? So that's 200. And we get 26. And of course, when a sub walks in with customers, customers walk in. And then we add down. But there's a trick here. If I can just come out a little bit, only a little bit, but if I can just come out a little bit, the product of your cash flow workings is cash flows, of course. This 41, it's a cash flow. This, I haven't done any more. This associate cash flow is a cash flow. The products of your workings are cash flows, except one. And you do have to remember this. There's no other way around it. It's just remembering. This is the impairment. So when you add down in goodwill, you have to remember it's not a cash flow. It's the impairment. 92 minus 78 plus 26 gives 4 for 440. Gives 40. And of course, the amount of cash that flows when you have a subsidiary impairment is 0. The impairment has gone against cost of sales and therefore is included in the operating profit, but the amount of cash that has flowed is 0. So we add it back, because basically it's exactly the same thing as depreciation, really. So depreciation, you add it back to remove its effect. Impairment, you add it back to remove its effect. So we're adding it back to remove its effect, not to put it in, to pull it out. And that's pretty much it now, except for the prize winning points. So let's have a go at the first prize winning point. That's paragraph 5. The increase in the loans during the year was related to the issue of loan stock, partly for cash and partly to finance raw materials valued at 70. Now, looking at this again, you can clearly see that there's 70 of materials, and that's related to the loan stock. Now, we made a mistake, and you always make mistakes when you're doing cash flow statements. You make them and then you adjust for them. It's definitely true that the loan issue is 435. That's definitely true. But what we assumed is that the loan issue is purely and wholly and exclusively cash flow. When the loan stock flowed out, cash flowed in. And that's usually what happened. But in this particular question, the usual doesn't happen. We get mostly cash, but we get 70 of materials. If 435 is the total, of which 70 is materials, and the rest is cash, then the amount of cash is 365. Now I think just to make that stand out, I think I'll just do it in blue. So you go 365. So that's minus 70 due to paragraph 5 is the adjustment there. Now there's a feature of my answer that I want you to pick up on. There's actually 2 marks here. One is for the 435 and the other is for the 365, for the adjustment of 70. Now clearly if you've got the 365 you get the 2 marks, obviously. If you get the 365 you get the 2 marks. But if you have the 435 and you change it, but the 435 is not visible underneath, then you can't have even 1 mark. So can you see how I've sort of stacked up my answer, sort of the adjusted answer on top of the answer below, which is still visible. That's the way to do it. Make sure your answer below is visible. The 365 is right, by the way. But if I'd made a mistake on the 365, I can still have the 1 mark for the 435, providing it's visible. So we need to leave it visible, just like that, just like I'm doing there. Now that's hard, but that's not actually the prize winning point. This is the prize winning point. This is the prize winning point. What did we do with depreciation? We added it back to remove its effect. Why was that? Because it was a cost, but there was a zero cash flow. What did we do with impairment? We added it back to remove its effect. Why was that? Because it is a cost, but there was zero cash flow. What you do with this, you add it back to remove its effect because it is a cost, but the cash flowing out is zero because we didn't pay for it with cash, we paid for it with debt. So it's exactly the same as depreciation. It is a cost that is in the P&L that doesn't have a corresponding cash flow, so we add it back to remove its effect. Really tricky that, but there you go. And that's not even the hardest bit of the whole question. Getting in at the end of the question can give you sort of lopsided view of this question. It's basically, most of it's pretty easy with these really difficult bits at the end. That's what all cash flows are like. But you can get a bit depressed because the end is a bit depressing. Paragraph 2, also, that's going to be a little bit depressing. Prize winning point here. The remainder of the shares issued during the year were issued for cash during a rights issue. What? A rights issue. So there was a rights issue. But there was also an issue in paragraph 1. So there are 2 share issues during the year. Going back to our answer, what we assumed in the context of the share issue was that there was just 1 share issue and it was for cash. Now share issues are pretty rare and having 2 share issues in 1 year is pretty much unheard of. It's just an academic thing. But what 2 share issues we have is one is for cash and the other one's to buy the subsidiary, and a sub-acquisition share issue is not for cash. Now we already know that the sub-acquisition share issue was $4 multiplied by 20 million. I'll just remind you of that. We know that the sub-acquisition share issue is, no, that's wrong. The wrong thing to highlight is $4 multiplied by 20 million. There you go, highlight the right thing there. $4 multiplied by 20 million is, of course, 80. So if there are 2 share issues and 80 is the sub-acquisition one, then the other 70 must be the cash flow one. Really tricky that, especially because you've got to accommodate paragraph 1 and 2 together to actually get that correction. And that's just what cash flow statements are like. You know, you go, doing all the easy marks, maybe do some of the medium ones and just chuck the hard ones away. And by working really quickly on question 1, it just opens up, you know, the narrative in the B section for you to give you loads of time. So rather than trying to, you know, for me, you know, cash flow statement, personally for me, the way I would approach a cash flow statement is, I mean, literally talking about me, is I'd do it for half an hour, literally half an hour, and then, you know, I'd score my 25 in half an hour, maybe 26, maybe 27, maybe 28, but to get, in the next, I might only get 3 marks in the next half hour, literally. So rather than noodling around with all the hard stuff at the end, all I do is just go into the B section. So if a cash flow statement comes up as question 1, for me, even though it's 35 marks, and therefore in theory an hour, I wouldn't do it for an hour. I'm being honest, I would do it for half an hour, but then of course I've practiced a lot more cash flow statements than you will have by the time you get to the exam. But still, you would have practiced lots of cash flow statements by the time you get to the exam. And when it comes to cash flow statements, I'm going to recommend that you consider just doing it for 3/4 of an hour, and the extra 15 minutes that you earn by going fast in the cash flow statement, you then use in the B section in the narrative to make sure you actually pass the exam, rather than trying to get the prize winning points in question 1, which is just a waste. More on that idea in a moment. Then we close out the workings. For the remaining cash flows, and then we go to a break. So 1248 minus 2473 plus 80 minus 51 minus 40 plus 172 equals 1064 minus 1064 minus 1064 PPE purchases minus 1064 it's tangibles, and then tax, cash flow for the tax paid. So 202 minus 222 plus 417 minus 390 plus 213 plus 13 equals 233. 233. And we bring that onto the face. 233. And then in theory, you balance your cash flow statement. There are no marks for balancing the cash flow statement. So this is purely an academic exercise, and I certainly won't be doing it on revision. 790 minus 79 minus 61 plus 68 plus 51 minus 7 plus 110 equals 872. Minus 48 minus 233, 591. And then we repeat this 591 up there, it goes all the way up there. So 591 plus 23 plus 90 plus 47 plus 3 minus 124 minus 1064 plus 70 minus 30 plus 365 minus 78 minus 41 equals minus 48, and the cash flow statement balances. What's the chances of that happening in the examination? Absolute zero. If you missed any of those numbers, and you might have done, don't forget there are of course answers in the back of your class notes to all of the exercises, including this one. There are answers in the back, but also these actual notes that I'm writing now will be available to you tomorrow morning. The PDF version of these notes will be available to you tomorrow morning. Good stuff, guys. You can see what you need to do with cash flow statements. It's a real animal experience. You just need to repeat, do it over and over again until you can do it in your sleep. There's no layers of complexity here. It's just that the more you do this, the better you get. It is a real animal thing. You know, there's all sorts of subtleties to playing the piano, but the basic mechanics of playing the piano is a real animal thing. And you know, to be able to play the piano a little bit, you've got to put in the work. And that's over to you guys. So I'm going to take a break now, and when I come back, I'm going to deal with your queries, including those of Punit. See you in a moment.